Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of One Take because life has no rehearsal. And today I am really honored to bring Phillip Bacon. Philip has a very varied career, but one of the things that I think hit off for me is his involvement in the urban philanthropies and his real dedication to teaching. I guess you call them disinvested people, disinvested kids on the advantage of education, exposure, building businesses, something that will create value in people's lives. So, Philip, I'm truly honored. Thank you very much. Um,
Well, thank you, Marcelo.
go
I
for it.
appreciate you inviting me to be on.
No, it's a real pleasure. I mean, I haven't seen you in a bit, but I keep in touch, or at least I keep track of all of your many travels. So
Right.
you're enjoying life these days, but how did it begin? Let's talk about a decisive moment. What either created the modern Philip Bacon or changed your life? What happened?
Well, it's interesting because I went to a fairly prominent school. I went to Wash U in St. Louis. And my last semester, I had an internship with the Black Caucus, Black Congressional Caucus in DC. And this was, this was when the Black Caucus first started. And I was working for Ralph Metcalf specifically, but he was part of the Black Caucus. But when I got out of this experience, I used to walk the congressman to the floor of the House of Representatives during the day. And then I was living in Falls Church, Virginia, and I would come home and pick up junkies out of the doorway of where I was living and so forth. And then I was dating a girl who had dirt floors, and outside of her window you could see the Washington Monument. So I was always balanced in terms of my orientation to what I was doing, life, and that kind of thing. But when I got out of when I graduated, I didn't have a job, and I was driving a cab, and a friend of mine from Minneapolis called me. He was working for Cargill. And he said, "Hey, listen, come up and interview for a job." So I did, went through the whole process, ended up, they had a management training program, and I ended up in the sales department selling salt, Louisiana rock salt. Okay. And they thought I was better as a salesperson as opposed to a commodities dealer and that kind of thing. But anyway, I had a pretty successful career, a short career as a salt salesman. I had a territory in Pittsburgh, and this was back in the early 70s, and I was probably the only Black person that would go to these small rural towns, and people would look forward to me coming, and I was affable and that kind of thing. So I sold a lot of salt, you know. But um, as time went on, I was thinking about what I was going to do and how long I was going to do this. And we were in a very overproduced industry. I mean, they have tons of salt. They have rock salt mines in the north, and I was selling out of a rock salt mine in the south, which was actually a pure grade of salt. But it was an overproduced industry, and the margins were very low. And I thought that the company that I was with basically was focused on the commodities business and that kind of thing. And I started to think, this is not going to be, this is not going to take me very far, in my career. And so I applied for another position and ended up with American Hospital Supply. And that was a very, I think, decisive moment for me, because not only did I change jobs, but it actually changed my location. They ended up sending me to South Florida. I think I arrived in South Florida in February of 1977, and so it just kind of changed. And it was an opportunity, I thought, at the time, to work in an industry where the sky was the limit. Um, you know, most of the people selling hospital supplies were full commission salespersons. A lot of them were making, even at that time, $150,000, $200,000 a year.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is just, I'm a good salesperson. And this is the best thing that ever happened. So that was a real decisive um, changing point in my life, because it not only changed my career, but it changed my geography.
Yeah, no, I can see. And of course, it's a great incentive in 1976. People to make 150,000, that was
Right.
good money. That was an
Yeah.
excellent amount of money. So tell me a bit more about the urban philanthropies, and let's focus. I mean, like, it has changed. I was going to say Miami and everything, it has changed, but it continues changing all of the time. And today, I think that it has changed even more. One of the things I've been very involved in is startups. I have by now 5 startups, so I can be considered a serial failure because only 2 of them have been successful. So 3 of them have been failures. So I'm a serial failure. But I love education. I love mentoring. I have mentored, I don't know, 100 people in my career. I'm very proud of it. So tell me more about it. Like, how did you get involved? What changed? And what did you do about it?
Okay. So I have to just step back a little bit, because I was happy with American Hospital Supply, but then the government came out with this, what they call diagnosis related groups, where they started reimbursing hospitals by procedure as opposed to by cost. And when that happened, the industry consolidated. I mean, all the hospital supply people had to consolidate, and then they had these major, uh, contracts. And the contracts, you couldn't go in and you couldn't sell something at cost. You had to sell it for what the contract said, and basically it cut all of our commissions in half. And because of the consolidation, everybody started buying each other. And then when a company, Baxter, bought us, as an example,
Yeah.
and so what they did was they took all of the they cut all of the commissions for all of the high earners, of which I was one, and they replaced us all with kids coming right out of college, and they gave them, just a regular salary and maybe $12,000 bonus or something at the end of the year. And so I decided at that point that no, what I thought to myself, what am I going to do? I mean, I've been a salesman, so I decided to go and get an MBA and basically just change my career trajectory to something that was more business oriented and so forth. And to make a long story short, I worked for the city of Fort Lauderdale, where I was the economic development manager. I was the CRA manager. And then came along something called the Collins Center for Public Policy. And so I started working for the Collins Center. And the Collins Center was involved in various policy, they would write various policy papers, from anything on voting in Florida to poverty and philanthropy and that kind of thing. But they went out of business. They after a tremendous amount of expansion in I'd say 2011, 2012, they went out of business. But I was the general manager of something called the South Florida Smart Growth Land Trust, and where we owned about $5 million worth of land. And that morphed into urban philanthropies after the Collins Center went bust. So what we were going to do, we decided that because we didn't have any all we had was land, that we would trade that asset for cash. So we sold the land, and then we decided that we were going to try to focus on entrepreneurship in disinvested communities, which Overtown was one, where we were based. So we found that kids had a lot of entrepreneurial chops,
Mhm.
entrepreneurial spirit, and so forth. But they had to be trained. They were sort of operating in a and I think what we called like the um, non-mainstream economy. And so
Yeah.
what we were trying to do was we were trying to bring them into the mainstream. In other words, they were either selling drugs or they were, selling T-shirts out of the back of the car and that kind of thing. And so what we tried to do was to help them um, develop back office skills and bring their businesses over into the mainstream. We tried to help them brand themselves, and that kind of thing. And along the way, we took some of the money and we started businesses, and we would employ some of the kids that we were trying to train. And as I said before, one of the most successful startups that we had was called the Urban, which is still going on in Overtown now. And it's a big destination for the urban music scene in Overtown. I mean, people used to go to the beach. Now they come to the Urban in Overtown. And we've had everybody there from Chris Brown to, oh, I don't know. I'm not familiar with all of the younger rappers and that kind of thing. But we've had some really headliners, at the Urban.
No, that's great. Actually, I remember in Winwood when it was like Savage.
Right.
I was, part on a lease in a gallery. Since then, of course, it was called the Gray Area of all things, and there was a lot of hip hop in the streets that we consider wild, if you can imagine. Like we were in a place where most people in Miami would say, "You have a gallery in a very wild place," and we thought it was like the most normal place. But then, as you went into Sixth Avenue and Seventh Avenue, like near US 1 or I-95, that we consider that rough. And I went
Yeah.
to a lot of hip hop events. They were like street events. People just gather, and we had old school hip hop, which I actually like. I still listen to it, and like newer rap. So it's a great thing. So it's a fantastic career helping people create their own businesses, especially because honestly a lot of them are denied normal entries into mainstream America, you know
Yeah.
and it happens. I mean,
Well, we
so
used to do things like we would have business plan contests where we would actually have people from the community judge the presentations, and we'd give $5,000 awards. I think at one time we even gave a $10,000 award to the
wow.
best business plan and so forth. But not only that, we would take those people under our wing, and we would help them further develop their businesses and so forth. So, yeah, we felt very good about what we were doing, and I think we had. I can go around now and probably name 5 or 6 businesses that we helped launch that are still in business.
But it happens. I mean, like for example, when I was in at the beginning of high school, actually, one of our friends, Jesus, he started selling. I'm not gonna. I don't think it was bootlegged, but records like LPs and vinyl in
Right,
those days, right? Really, not out of the trunk of his car because we didn't have any cars at all. But he would come to school with the things, the records, and he would sell them, and that's the way he began his business.
right,
He also learned many things from people who were in those days our age. For example, when the record companies would call him up and say, "Hey, Jesus, which ones are selling more?" He would never tell them the truth. He would always mention the ones that were not selling, so they would go on the list and he could, get rid of them.
right.
So he learned a lot of tricks, and I think it's great to do something like that. So just like in the few minutes that we have left, you've done fantastic work in mentoring kids and seeing them develop, young kids. Now we're on the other side of the spectrum, right? We are on the non-kid side of the spectrum, you and I.
Right.
So but we still work, we still get involved, we still do stuff. So let's say you were talking to a CEO, and the CEO was interviewing, like a few candidates, and one of them was our age. I'm not going to go in public and say your age, but everybody knows my age. So what do you tell that CEO about hiring people like us, either full-time or like on a fractional basis? By the way, what is the value that what a friend of mine says, POA, people of age, bring
Yeah.
into the workforce.
Well, there's lots of things that I guess I could say. One of the first thing that comes to mind is that there is a certain amount of enthusiasm that an older person is going to bring to the job because either they've been retired or they've had, they've changed careers. But in either case, they've had an opportunity to think and, really try to determine what it is that they really want to do after having all of the experiences that they've had. So whatever they've chosen is something that has been well thought out and that kind of thing. And because of all of that, they're going to bring a tremendous amount of enthusiasm as well as experience to the job. I mean, they're not going to overtalk it. They're not going to, you know, do the first thing that pops into their mind. They're going to be more deliberate in terms of their decision making. They're going to be dependable. They're going to show up. They're going to adapt to the culture of the company because they understand how important that is.
Yep.
They're going to be honest, and they just don't have the short term pressures. They don't have the short attention span that some of the younger people have, these days. So, on average or on par, to hire an older person is a tremendous opportunity to get a really, really solid and good employee.
I totally agree. Totally. I mean,
Yeah,
we still bring enthusiasm to the job. We still, wake up every morning thinking, what else can I do? How do I improve everything? And
exactly.
and it is true. I mean, we tend not to jump to conclusions because by now we've seen what happens if you do. So,
Yeah.
we tend to be more measured in our approach. So,
And by
Philip,
the way, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
please.
When I'm looking at, say, somebody that works for me, okay, or a younger person, that is the number one criterion in terms of me being able to measure their maturity. How quick do they react to something? I mean, some decisions you have to make pretty fast, okay? But most of the times, when I say pretty fast, some of the times you have to say, when somebody brings you an idea, you have to say, no, we're not doing that,
Yeah.
okay? But generally speaking, when somebody brings you an idea, unless it's just totally off the rail, unless you can see it coming from like, the pile of stuff that you've collected over the years, right?
Yeah.
Usually you need to think about it because there's something that you can pull from every situation that you can capitalize on if you're studied and if you're steady. And if you can, it's like a fruit. You can squeeze the juice, the juice out of something that is ordinarily bitter. And when you do that, you've got something that nobody else has. So I think it's important that you take your time and you give something a second thought and maybe even a third thought
Oh,
based on the more information that you can get.
yep. Also, I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one of the things, though, as we get older, we don't see a huge problem in changing our minds so that we have an
Yeah.
opinion. The opinion is based on what we have lived through. But if somebody comes in with new information or we see new data, then we say, okay, that makes sense. And then, we can change completely or, like even take a small detour or, like a slightly different direction. We're not closed to, new ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've said out of my own mouth, that's a great idea. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think for a mature person, an older person, that makes you look strong as opposed to weak.
Yep.
Um,
Couldn't agree more.
and especially if you if you are operating from what I would call a command type of platform, so that people come to you because they know that you can make decisions and they feel comfortable with the decisions that you make, and they look up to you
Yes.
because you have experience and so forth. Given those things, I think it's easier to say, oh, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So great. So, Philip, thank you very much. I know you've taken quite a bit of time from your schedule, driving all over the place, which who knows? I might do it. My wife really wants me to get an RV and stuff, and discover
Well, you know what?
the U.S. And
We'll have to talk offline about it because there's a certain mentality you have to have to be an RVer, to get into that group. Most of the people are not like you, Marcelo. Most of the people have decided to retire, and that's it. And you're still thinking, you're still active, and you might be a little disappointed with the crowd that you have to become familiar with.
that and the fact that my car actually does 151 miles per hour.
Wow,
I
wow.
can't see
Okay,
an RV doing 151.
yeah,
But
I'm telling you, I can do. I have a Mercedes SL63,
oh wow,
and
nice.
it'll go.
Oh yeah,
I've not had it at 151, but I've had it at 130,
oh yeah. No, 130.
and
I
I've had
do.
a ticket. I've had a ticket to reflect that.
I haven't. I haven't. But yeah, an SL63. That is a fast, stately car.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a heavy car
it
for what
is.
it is.
And my car is an 11, so it was still when they had the real engine in there, not the aluminum thing that they put in there now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So we'll have to talk about the RV world.
Okay,
Meanwhile, thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I thought it was great reconnecting. And I wish you the best of luck, man. Just good travels, safe travels.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.